Good morning. First, I want to welcome you to the breakfast this morning, and then I will introduce our distinct group for the panel discussion. We could have Senator Addie Eckert. She could come forward. Jim Mathias, and then delegates Sherry Sample Hughes, Chris Adams, Johnny Maltz, Charles Otto, Carl Adderton, and Mary Beth Feroza. Thank you all for coming this morning. The format and questions were developed by members of the Advocacy Network. All of our legislative delegation members have been provided these questions in advance. Copies are also available on the dining tables this morning. Additionally, cards have been provided on the dining tables for the audience questions. If you have a question to a legislator, please write that on a card, raise your hand, and Bill Chambers will retrieve your card. Following the question and answer session, we will ask each of the delegation members to offer some closing thoughts and short remarks. All right. For the first question, first question is on employee leave. State mandated employee leave benefits are now a reality in Maryland. What new state mandated employee benefits do you support? In particular, the mandatory schedule notification bill, and then they have those numbers on your question at the that bill, which what did not pass, but likely to return in 2018, would have placed an onerous burden on our businesses, especially the service and the retail session. I will ask Senator Jim Mathias to start, and we will move across the panel. Morning. Or you can take the mic way up. Yep.
We'll start up this way. All right. Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I thought you told me this wasn't going to be hard. The hardest part of the question I heard was to be short. And I heard Kathleen say, Jim's going to do that. But anyway, and I will be. And I want to thank all of you for your confidence in the business community here in Wycomico County and here at Warwick. And we had a great session. But let's stick to the question, and we'll get to the highlights in a minute. So look, you know, some things are real in life, like gravity. And you're going to defy it, you have to make sure that you've got a plan. And when you talk about the sick pay bill, it was talked about for 5 years. And when I came home last year, I said, the bill's going to pass. The bill's going to pass. Oh, I'm sorry, you want money for the Shorebird Stadium and Convention Center and a Third Bay Bridge and all that? Well, you know, we have to make sure we're able to work with folks all across. We have a great delegation, and we agree about 95% of the time. But you know, when you need those numbers to pass a bill, you have to work with your colleagues there. And what's good for us here on the shore sometimes might not be good for them, and vice versa. So I asked the business communities when I came home, tell me what you need to work. What do you need? What do you need? And when the bill came out, there was no, it was a 90-day seasonal exemption. But they said, hey, we need 120 days. And without getting into it, you know, I delivered. So I had an option, folks. As we do in life. You know, do we take a little less than what we want, or do we get what we need in order to make certain that we keep it working so that we can do the things we did? And I won't go on and on. We took a bill that was onerous, and I'm sure it's onerous. And by the way, it's not the law of the land. Governor Hogan did veto it. And it's uncertain as to where we're going to go with that, okay? And we can talk about that too if you'd like me to, but I'm going to stick to short. But you know, when the bill came out, you could earn 7 days. We were able to bring it around. I was in the committee of jurisdiction to 5. When the bill came out, you could start earning at 8 hours. We were able to move that part-time up to 12. Right to action was onerous. We were able to mitigate that. And on and on. And by the way, although we didn't hit the target exactly of 120, we hit 106 with an additional 14 days that's required with a doctor's note. Where, you know, there were employers that said, hey, look, you know, I'm concerned that we're going to have seasonal employees and they're going to bank this. And then on the 107th day, they're going to get a bad case of whatever. And, you know, I'm not saying that maybe I was never like that exactly. But when I went to Ocean City, I knew what it was like to enjoy the beach and never had a chance to do it. So we made sure that we put that insurance in there for those folks. So that's what happened. I voted for the bill. There's 47 members of the Senate. 29 voted yes, is exactly the number that's necessary to override a gubernatorial veto. I respect the governor's veto. It's part of the legislative process. I vetoed 2 bills when I was the mayor that had tax increases. Council said I wouldn't do it. I said, yeah, well, let's work this out. Well, they didn't, and I did. So the bottom line is it's part of that legislative process as we go forward. So the 29 has to stick. I'm reading in the paper, and I have a great relationship with Governor Hogan. I can go on a litany of things that we've done together, from school after Labor Day, third base band crossing, to PMT, to our farmers and the like. And it's all true. If I do anything up here today, besides maybe going a little bit, it's all understated. I won't overstate it. But I read in the paper that the governor says that he's going to work with the legislature. Well, he's a pretty smart guy. I'm the 29th vote, or the first vote, however you want to count it. I'm waiting for the phone to ring, and let's see how well we can work this out. I understand exactly what our business community needs, but I also understand what our working families need. Both ends of the spectrum. As you well know, I'm not going to sit here and sell the bill. You're smart. You don't need the state to mandate your personnel manual. I agree with that 100%. Whether it's your pay per hour, I'm opposed to the $15 minimum wage. We can go on. The pay stub bill that we killed in our committee, it would require a more thorough enunciation of this and that and how much you get paid and where, and the fair scheduling bill, all those things. You don't need that. But I knew that bill was going to pass, and I delivered for our constituents. And it's a better bill. It still brings some burden and worry with it. We'll see how the governor lobbies it, and I'm willing to listen and continue to work with him and our business community and our families as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Johnny Mounts, and the paid sick leave bill was a bill that came through our committee. It's one that we worked on, or you could say we worked on it. We really didn't do much amending. The bill went through on a party line vote. It's a bill that I didn't support. Paid sick leave, I think, is a very good thing for employees, and you want to help employees. Anyone who runs a business will tell you their strongest asset are their employees. They make the business. But the way this bill was put together, it was taken from a union contract and it was applied statewide to all businesses, and you just simply can't do that. Businesses want to comply. You know, when you give them a bar, they find a way to make that bar, they meet that bar. But by setting the bar through a set of requirements and then super strong enforcement provisions through the Department of Labor. If any businesses have been through the Department of Labor, you know you've already lost if you've had to show up for something there. To me, is not a good way to implement a paid sick leave policy in Maryland. And so the bill is vetoed. I think you could do a paid sick leave policy if you made it voluntary and said businesses put together a paid sick leave policy and show it to us and show us how it works, and that would be a good way to start to do that policy statewide. But to take the approach that we've taken and put it into law, I support the governor's veto, and I hope that we're able to sustain that veto this coming session. You know, the governor's popularity is noticed in Annapolis, and this is an issue the business community has to stand up for. They need to talk about, and they need to express themselves. We need to know numbers, we need to know examples, and I hope everybody in this room is taking it to heart, because I think in the past everyone just wrote things off. Okay, you know, they're going to do whatever they're going to do in Annapolis. There's nothing we can do to stop them. I don't think so. I think this bill in particular is so far outside the mainstream that if we organize and we get active, that we could actually have an impact on what that vote total will be. And that's not to say that paid sick leave policy discussion is over. Paid sick leave can work. You just have to do it in a manageable way for businesses, particularly our small independent businesses on the shore. So that's paid sick leave. My points on the paid sick leave. The mandatory scheduling bill, that's come up the last couple of years through our committee. It has not gained support to move through. That's a bill I have have big concerns, personal concerns. I'm from the hospitality industry. 2-week, 3-week notice scheduling. Each business I'm familiar with, they have their own policies. Employees who go to work for those businesses, they know what those policies are before they sign up, and some work for some people, some don't work for other people. And I think you have to let the businesses and the employees have that relationship. And there's another important business-related bill that's not listed here that everyone should put on their ticker or their teaser, whatever you want to call it. It's a bill that would ticker on the ticker. Put it on the ticker. I'm not going to go way off, but there's another bill everyone should take a close look at that deals with past salary information for hiring individuals, and the bill would prohibit prospective employers from asking job applicants what their prior salary was before hiring them. I think that's a big problem because in most industries, when someone's applying for a job, the first question is what did you make? What do you need? How do we make that work? That's at the smaller level. You have a bigger business that has, scheduled employment and salary levels and things like that. But that's another bill that I think will be discussed and pushed. One of my biggest concerns is that these employee, I'm taking up too much time. I'll save that for the closing. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Johnny.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the Salisbury Chamber of Commerce in Warwick for hosting this event today. I also want to personally thank all of you who have remained active in the process. You all, when you do contact us on issues, take time to meet with us and go through them, it really strengthens the advocacy and the roles and positions we can take, whether it's in committee or on the House floor. So I want to thank you and continue to encourage your involvement. I know it's taking you all away sometimes from whether it's your business or your responsibilities, but I can tell you the investment that you make with us in educating us and making sure we understand your positions really allows us to take even stronger positions for you in Annapolis. Specifically on the paid sick leave bill, just as a way of background, as the Senator Mathias noted, we all did see that the paid sick leave bill was coming, and that because it had come the past sessions and it was clear that there was going to be a real push, obviously if it's HB1, it's the top priority to pass a bill. And I want to give Governor Hogan credit because what he did is he came up with a bipartisan bill on the paid sick leave, as he again is advocating now with his veto, where he acknowledged that employers want to provide this benefit, but you could do it in a way that is not harmful to employers and actually is more helpful to employees. And the reason that I say that is once our local businesses understood what was in the final version of HB1 that was passed, I've actually had local employers come up to me and say, well, I'm simply not going to hire 15 people in order to stay under that cap. So that tells you right there, number one, it's a job killer. Two, a lot of people didn't realize it affected the J1 students. It also affects the individuals with disabilities that work at places like Lower Shore Enterprises. So you can see that this bill went way too far. The past 2 years, I've been the author of an amendment to have a 120-day seasonal exemption. I believe that through this process with Governor Hogan vetoing the bill and holding out a bipartisan compromise, that is still something on the table that we can advocate. I will also underscore Delegate Mounts' point that the governor and we need to hear from you on this. So those of you who took the time to let Governor Hogan know that you wanted him to veto this bill, that correspondence and communication was extremely important. Now we're at the point that we're going to work through this summer. As a matter of fact, I know there's a session on Thursday morning with the Tri-County Chambers where you all will have an opportunity to get more involved in that specific issue. We have to keep working through this. So as Delegate Mounts mentioned, it's, this is not over. We're going to continue to work with you. On the other bills that have been brought up, Obviously, I think you all have noted they've come through a certain committee on the House side. They go through the House Economic Matters Committee. And Delegate Chris Adams and Delegate Mounts are perfectly positioned to go through these bills and really understand what the impact is for you locally. And it was, very helpful that as the paid sick leave bill was worked through, both Delegate Adams and Delegate Mounts could say, wait a minute, this is how this is going to work in reality for these small businesses. A lot of us, we defer to our colleagues on those committees, and you'll see with your other questions, there's a question about ag policies and how they impact you. On those issues, we tend to defer to Delegate Anderton and Delegate Otto. So I would continue to educate us on specific issues, but keep in mind we have folks on key committees. I did want to make one comment on the mandatory scheduling notification bill, and I guess personalize it a little bit. That Delegate Mounts reminded me in his comments. I mean, I'm thinking of the small business owners, and I'm going to give you an example. My parents had the first fast food drive-through restaurant in Ocean City called Beefy's. And they gave a lot of teens their first job. But if they had something like a mandatory scheduling notification bill, they wouldn't have been able to offer those teens their first jobs and to move forward with their business. So I think when we talk about these policies, we have to bring them home. What does this really mean? So I, again, will be looking at it from that standpoint, be talking to my colleagues, Delegate Adams and Delegate Mounts on the House side on how this affects our local businesses, and continue to hear from you. But I can tell you right now, I'm opposed to that bill, and will continue to be opposed to it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Beth. If we could try to make our comments
I got you
brief,
covered,
we
brother. Don't
will
you worry
never
about
get
that.
through the 5 questions.
I got you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Carl.
Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing?
Good.
No, you're not. Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Good. Hey, how was that bacon back there? Was it good? Yeah? Well, my whey protein shake was fantastic this morning. No, not at all. But so you've heard a lot about paid sick leave, and you'll hear a lot more about that as Delegate Adams speaks. He's very, very well versed on that, so I will actually kind of defer that to him, except to say that a lot of the topics I heard in Annapolis were from smaller business owners in our area who were saying, look, I'm just not going to hire anybody. And so as soon as I heard that, that was a no-starter for me, because that's the whole point of everything we do, is to put everyone in a position where they can hire somebody. That's my whole thing. If somebody gets a job, it's not just that one person that gets the job, it's the whole family. You've changed their family tree by just offering them an opportunity for employment. So anything that makes that cumbersome, in my opinion, is just a non-starter. And so that's kind of where I stood on that. As soon as I heard that the first time, I was like, well, I can't support this, even though I get the premise and the idea of paid sick leave, but not incentivizing it and not making it, turn out to be a benefit both for the employer and the employee. For me, that was just something I couldn't work with. The same thing with the mandated, the scheduling bill, that mandatory schedule notification bill. Being a former schedule maker myself in retail, that'd be a nightmare. I mean, that would be absolutely, you just never know from one day to the next what you're going to get. It truly is a box of chocolates, when you're in that type of work. You never know. And so trying to schedule something 3 weeks out, really? I was lucky to have 3 days out. So it's just, again, it was just a nightmare. I see both sides of it, I get it, but it's just something that, again, that's not practical. But, again, thank you for letting me come hang out with y'all this morning. I'm blessed to represent many of you in Annapolis, and so I will pass the proverbial mic over to Senator Eckert.
Thank you very much. I, too, have not supported this initiative. I worked for 30-some years in inpatient psych setting with 24/7 coverage. I've done scheduling, and my son is in small business in Western Maryland, so I understand the implications of how we want to be business-friendly and how we want to be what I call business constrictive. And if you make too many laws and too much Accommodation is the way I will frame it, because I think the governor put in a sick leave bill that had been worked out. Was it what everybody in the community and in our business community was happy with? No. And we knew there was going to need to be work done on it. But the bill that came out of the legislature from the House and then to the Senate, I think had too many fingers in the pie, too much accommodation without building consensus from the business community. I was on the phone with a large business whose policies are set out of state. And that is true for many of our businesses. They cannot make their policies locally. They're out of state, and that has significant implications. It has significant implications to small businesses at the same time, as you've heard down the table. So I did not support it because I did think it needed more input on a more consensus building around designated elements of that bill, because it went too far in an attempt and tried to please too many people instead of being really simple. And I'm a great believer in a few simple rules that everybody can adhere to are a better way to go. In healthcare and housing and everything else we do, what do? We do an inventory of what the practice is in the community. And then from that, we look at what are the elements that everybody can live with and make adjustments to without being onerous. And I don't think that has happened yet. As people read the bill, once it was finished in Annapolis, then they saw even more trouble with it. And that's a good indicator, again, as you've heard, that the work has not been completed. There's something else called time warp. We're working on bills in Annapolis, and now you see it, now you don't. If it's not in your committee, you don't quite know what's happening because you're busy with other things, and all of a sudden it pops up quickly. There's almost not enough time to get to the community people, the businesses, to be able to respond. And then when they do respond, it's already been through. So we've got to figure out a better way to do that. And I think at least with the governor's veto, it buys us time to be able to go back and look at the elements we need to work on.
Thank you, Addie. Chris?
Well, the chair of the Wicomico County delegation has just put me on the spot. Delegate Chris Adams, Bill Chambers, thank you for the service you provide for the Chamber of Commerce. You've already opened some doors for me in your work with the Chamber, and I recognize that everybody at the seat here today will benefit from your leadership. And Salisbury Chamber of Commerce, I'm also a member. I've got 30 employees in our family business here in Salisbury. And let me just talk specifically on the paid sick leave, because not only do Johnny and I fight this bill every year that I've been in office, I recognize that the state has tried to pass this for 2 years prior, so this has been a 5-year exercise in futility for the Democrats. Let me be candid with you. I fought this bill as a business person. The year before I came into office through the National Federation of Independent Business. We have been successful of killing this bill until this year, which I believe has much to do with politics, putting this on the desk of our governor during a coming election year and trying to make some political hay from that. I find that very frustrating. As a business person, let me share with you, and it's hard to see if you're in the back, this is 22 pages of House Bill 1. All right, this is a mandated state benefit, and this is how government gets by trying to tell me as a business person how to write my employee manual. First off, my company with 30 employees has paid sick leave. I value my people, and I will tell you, if you're sick with the flu in my business, you're going to go home, and I'm going to pay you to go home. If you're a fellow that works for me and you're a Baltimore Ravens fan and you can't make it to work for 2 or 3 Mondays in a row, guess what? I'm going to fire you. And we laugh, but let me just say to you that my employee manual doesn't take more than a half a page to deal with how I treat my people. The thing that's very difficult politically is that there is polling that talks about why paid sick leave should be mandated. And I'll say to you that if you ask a Marylander, do they think businesses like mine should offer paid sick leave, the answer is nearly 80% of Marylanders think that you should be offering mandated paid sick leave. However, that same poll, when you ask those same Marylanders, what happens if a business has to reduce benefits? What happens if they have to reduce hours? Or if they have to do layoffs? All of a sudden, that poll turns upside down. All of a sudden, nearly 2 in 10 Marylanders support paid sick leave at that point. The National Federation of Independent Business recognizes, as I do, in the House Economic Matters Committee, that this will have a devastating impact on employers. Connecticut was the first state that passed this sort of mandate, and so we have an example of what actually happens when this mandate hits the streets in Maryland. And I will tell you, without going into further depth, that the statistics are very bad. NFIB, based on what happened in Connecticut, has come to the conclusion that this could cost 8,500 jobs by 2026, and that Maryland's real output could decrease by over $1 billion by 26. The cumulative real output loss between 2017 and 2026 is estimated to be $7 billion. So I'll simply close by sharing with you just 2 parts of this bill, aside from the economic realities of trying to pass this kind of mandate. First off, the bill gives the Commissioner of Labor and Industry far too much power. I have a very personal experience where I had to fight Maryland's Department of Labor a number of years back, which ultimately got me mad enough to run for the seat that Addie vacated when she ran for Senate. The commissioner, on an anonymous tip from an employee, can come to my business and demand my payroll records. And on top of that, that commissioner can actually charge me in violation of the law and then ask me to prove my innocence in front of an administrative law judge. That's called the rebuttable presumption. That's what I had to fight a few years back, and we were able to change Maryland law in that regard. The other part of the bill that I find flatly offensive is that it picks winners and losers. So not every employer, by the way, is mandated to offer this paid sick leave. One industry that's exempt is the agricultural industry. Another industry is the seasonal exemption, which you heard about, but the problem with the seasonal exemption is it doesn't quite get you where you need to be if you're an Ocean City employer. The number doesn't add up. The last one is for the construction industry. So in my business, I'm in the construction industry. So great, Chris Adams is exempt from this law. The problem with the exemption is it only applies if you're a union shop in the construction industry. Now talk about being flatly offensive to the business community. I do not believe in picking winners and losers. This bill does that in the worst way possible. And this is why the governor vetoed this bill. And to be perfectly candid with you, I don't think that the legislature will automatically veto or override the veto come January. This will be an election season. I do think the House of Delegates will override the veto. However, the Senate numbers are much closer. I do believe that the governor made a calculated decision to benefit the business community, and he's going to put some people to test come next January as to whether or not the legislature in the Senate side is going to stand with you come January. Good luck, and thank you very much. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chris. Charles?
Well, I'll cut it brief for you. We've heard good comments about what the bill offered and what it didn't offer and the damage that it would do. I had a sore throat this morning, and pardon me if I have a coughing spell, but I didn't think you, the voters, would understand if I didn't show up here today. And I couldn't just call in sick and get paid for it. And as far as the mandatory scheduling notification, if I knew 3 weeks out when somebody was going to be sick, I could work that out pretty quickly too. I think an employer-employee relationship is very important and valuable, and the employer and the employee need to negotiate how to use their talents of each best. And the employer has the challenge of meeting that payroll every week, and they want to do it and pay for the employees to be there well and healthy and productive. And I don't think the state is meddling in something that it has no business in and will do a poor job of doing it. Because I can foresee they creating a minimum that they have to provide, and the employers scaling back to that minimum and creating strings and attachments to it. So I certainly have opposed that, and particularly for our small employers, that a small staff, that it is a greater challenge to fill in when somebody's sick, and the implications that has. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Sheree Sample Hughes.
Good morning, everyone. Certainly a pleasure to start our day, or start my day, first thing in the morning with the Chamber of Commerce and all of those citizens here in the audience. It certainly has been an interesting session, and it's been a great opportunity to come back to be able to share with you some of the things that occurred. In particular, for the sick leave, I certainly did support that piece of legislation, and it was for various reasons. This piece of legislation was designed to support 700,000 citizens, and the governor's legislation was designed to support about 120,000 citizens. I think what we can all comfortably say is that we all believe at some level that it is necessary to offer some level of sick leave for persons. I mean, these are individuals who are working in the businesses and who are trying to make sure the businesses run effectively. So what I did do, I had to personalize it a little bit and go out and ask businesses how this would affect them. And I asked the persons that worked in those businesses. One particular business is in Vienna, Leighton Chance, and that employee was very much concerned about the legislation because they actually are a homegrown neighbor business, and they know that they already have in their policy to support their employees. And so that can be said of many businesses around the state. But what can also be said of businesses around the state is that they don't look at the employees as their time being valued and them being in position to be able to take a day when they're sick. A business right here in Salisbury, an employee that has not missed any time, an employee who has been very consistent in getting to work and making sure they're there, came down with the cold, called in and stated that they were sick, and they got chastised for it, and then was asked to go back to be in the business. The business is a food industry, and was asked to go back and work on the line making the food. To me, that's somewhat concerning. And it's concerning for a couple of reasons: that the individual has been committed to their business, gave them all their best for many years, and then to be able to just say, you know, look, I am sick, and went to the doctor, paid the copay, and made their time, gave the note to the employer. But they were intimidated by the fact that they were about to lose their job for being sick. And unfortunately, that is reality. So we do have a mixture of people who are excellent business owners and make the time and look out and reach out for their employees. But then we have those who don't. And so to that end, that's why this one bill was certainly of the utmost importance during the legislature. I don't serve on the Economics Committee, but what I did do, I sat and looked at the 4-hour testimony that occurred in that committee. And I saw the give and take. And the give and take, what I'm referring to, is that the chairman of that particular committee asked the business persons that came before them, you know, how do you feel about line 26 on page 11? And that was, in particular, the fact of how they could do their scheduling with regards to someone shouldn't just have to take 4 hours because they may have a doctor's appointment that only takes 1 hour. So they scaled back on that. I mean, that's a little bit of a give and take, and that's how legislation, that's how government should work. We should listen to one another and see how it's going to benefit and how it's going to affect people. And so to that end, I just really believe that this needs to move forward. I know we're going to have to go back in session and discuss it more. And you know what? At that time, there very well be more give and take. So I'm certainly open to new ideas, but I also believe in the fact that we need to support individuals who are sick. And like myself, I was sick during session. I was out for about 2.5, 3 weeks. Unfortunately, I had no idea I was going to have to do all that. But thankfully, I was able to go back and do my job. So to that end, I look forward to hearing more from business persons and see how we can do a better job and make the legislation even better for those who live and work in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was question number one. I think we've taken entirely too much time on. If the second question is on healthcare exchange, can you discuss the repeal of Obamacare and the effect on the Maryland healthcare exchange with consideration to what effect these changes will have on healthcare providers? And I will start with Sherry.
And that's Cherie.
Cherie.
You know that song by Stevie Wonder, My Cherie Amour? I've had to do that all my life. Hey, this is Cherie. But again, so I do have the privilege and pleasure, honor to serve on the Health and Government Operations Committee. So we're certainly inundated with health issues and at all times, trying to figure out how each piece of legislation will be affected, how at that time while we're in session, the potential repeal of the Obamacare would in fact affect our mail-orders. And what we continued to hear were the concerns of the senior citizens on how they would be affected, how the disabilities communities would be affected. Those are serious concerns. The other piece that was concerning was that with this, the expansion, that the individuals who were able to get health insurance, for instance, adults without children, it's been challenging. Sometimes they're always denied for it, but those who were able to benefit from the expansion are now able to utilize health insurance. One particular business that I've been frequenting for about 22 years, the business owner has never had health insurance. And so just to be able to go to their business, sit in their chair, utilize their services, and I'm talking about that, I've got to go to the doctor, I've got to go to the dentist, and I've got to go get new glasses and things like that, and know that the person who's providing me the service is a minority businesswoman, and she's not even getting, or what at that time for many years, not even able to access health care because she couldn't afford it. That's concerning. So when I have seen the transition of her now having glasses, because she now has a chronic disease, and now being able to go to the dentist, I mean, that to me shows progress. So when you go and you look at the repeal, what the House did and the Senate, I know they're working, trying to make some changes before June 30th, to say, we need to hurry up and get it done. That's concerning to me, because we're talking about people. We're talking about people who need these services, and for those things to not be of the utmost importance and really look at it holistically, that's concerning for me as a legislator and as an individual who lives in the state of Maryland. And I do know that there will be major cuts at the federal level, then they're certainly coming down to the state level, and we're going to have to regroup and figure out how that works, because we do need teletherapy. We do need people to be able to go to the doctors and deal with their chronic illnesses, and those things would be affected. So we're trying to look at these things, but each and every day, as you're aware, the federal government are changing, the conversation is changing, and it's unfortunate, because at the end of the day, it's people who we serve are being affected.
Thank you. Charles?
Cherie serves on the Health and Government Operations Committee, so she's better well versed on this subject. And of course, it's still the Affordable Care Act is still in flux, and we don't know what the federal government's going to do. We were looking at the biggest part of that is Medicaid, and the expansion that took place in this state in Medicaid. We have 1 in 5 in Maryland is a Medicaid patient recipient. Some think that's a proud thing, and I find it to be a disgrace, to be quite honest, if that's the shape that our economy is in. But it did look like at one time we could be taking a $1.6 to $2 billion hit with Medicaid changes. That would be significant. I know we have assessments on hospital beds that they pay and subsidize the Medicaid and patients, and we've tried to get back away from that since 2007 when that took place. So it is an issue that we keep on top of and discuss it. We had some good speakers at our delegation meeting during this session to give us an assessment of what it means to rural health care and what's transpiring. And all I can say is we're keeping it in our spotlight and watching what happens, and we take great appreciation for the folks at PRMC and Atlantic General are keeping us informed of the things that are transpiring and how it affects them, as well as our physicians and all as well.
Thank you, Charles. Chris?
I'll afford you a brief response as I sit next to someone who's got much more experience in the field. What I recognize generally about Obamacare, so the question goes to what we think is going to happen in the state of Maryland. I think that politically, a heavy price was paid to pass that bill in the late 2009, 2010 era. So I think Americans have already decided in the polls as to how they feel about the general idea of having federal government involved in our health care decisions. So fast forward to what's happening right now, which I believe is what's coming full circle. You know, we finally have someone that's saying that the path we were headed with health care is perhaps not the path that we want to go. The path that I view was going to happen had there been a different electoral result in November, is we would have moved towards what's called single-payer health care through the country. So this would have been the final nail in the government taking over a sixth of our economy by virtue of running our health care insurance. So let me just give you one brief example of what's happening in California, which is the state of California has decided they're going to take what they thought was going to happen nationally and create a state initiative where they're going to pay for a single-payer plan with a 15% payroll tax on employers. This is a $300 billion initiative, and let me just say the debate's happening in California right now. The only thing I'm willing to say is that it would not surprise me come January in a political season that Maryland, through the legislature, starts talking about the same sort of initiative, forgetting how we're going to pay for it and how it's going to impact Marylanders. But I do think, as a Republican, that I believe in the private sector. I believe in the free marketplace. We've gotten far away from that in the healthcare field. This will be a decision that I think ultimately Marylanders could very well see legislators deciding how we move forward with the federal government saying to the states, we're not going to go the path you thought we were going. And I'll stop there and make that observation. We'll come back next year and we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Chris. Addie?
Thank you very much. How much time do we have on this subject? This is a big topic. I'm going to leave you with a couple of points. Maryland is unique. Maryland continues to be a leader in how we deliver health care. We have all but about 5% of our citizens covered with the ACA expansion, and Maryland was moving down the direction of trying to cover everybody long before the ACA was there, and we had high-risk pools, we had uncompensated care. We have leaders right now within the governor's cabinet who were there when we went down that road, and then we changed. We changed because Maryland believed it was important for us to design our own system. So we were one of the states who have what was called the all-payer system, which means that everybody gets compensated at the Medicare rate, and we've continued that way, and that has evolved into population health, recognizing that it's not just a person's health status that's important, but it's where they live and a number of other what they call social determinants of health. And so now we've moved into population health in an attempt to be able to help people take responsibility for themselves and begin to make changes, life changes, that will save money in the long run. And I'll give you one real quick example. If we could get the message out there on how to prolong Alzheimer's and dementia, if we prolong that just by 5 years, we would save about $480 billion. That's staggering when you think about that. That's one way getting to population health makes some changes in that with education and personal responsibility. With the exchange, we have already, the exchange is a piece of the puzzle that we would make changes as we did in the past in light of our total delivery system in Maryland, which I said is very complex. And we are also moving to integrated care, putting behavioral health, we call it behavioral health, it's actually brain disease. So we're going into community care, but then providing services for substance abuse, mental illness, and then eventually get back into total health care for individuals and families. And that's the direction that Maryland has been going. And so far they have been able to work with the federal government to move in that direction using the money that was available. We have experts. I truly believe we have experts. We have some of the best who were there through the changes. They are still there. They are monitoring very deliberately where we go forward. If we get states' rights and we can go ahead and do what we've been doing, then we still will continue to be a model for how we deliver that care and then how we bring down the cost for everybody, because it's expensive, whether it's the technology or the premiums that keep going up. It's expensive, and we want to make sure that people have affordable, accessible, quality health care. Currently, there are forums going on to look at rural health delivery, what's needed, what are the issues, and that's another part of this puzzle. So it's kind of a perfect storm, and yet I think it's a good time to make the kinds of changes that may be necessary both at the federal level and at the state level to be a little more efficient in how we use our dollars to make sure folks get the care they need.
Thank you, Addie. Carl?
Sure. Thank you. Again, I'll be brief. As I said, there's some folks sitting up here who are much more knowledgeable on these issues, having worked on them firsthand throughout their committee work. But there was a bill that was passed this year, the Maryland Health Insurance Coverage Protection Act, that establishes a commission to monitor potential and actual federal changes to Obamacare, Medicaid, the Maryland Children's Health Program, and Medicare, and assess the impact of such changes and provide recommendations for state and local action to protect access to affordable health care coverage. And I want to give a shout out to my aide Brittany, who wrote that down for me. So she did good. So, there was something done, to kind of keep an eye on what's going on at the federal level this winter. Heard conversations about the Maryland Healthcare Exchange. I got to be honest with you, that when it comes to constituent work, that's the number one issue. The number one volume of phone calls dealing with the health care exchange is just astronomical. And I find myself in Lutherville and in Baltimore, up there at their headquarters more often than I should be, dealing with the health care exchange, just getting people in a position to have health care through this setup. So any tweaks, anything that can be done to help that. And I'm not talking about the customer service end. If anybody's watching from Annapolis, y'all do really good. But you're working with the tools you're given, and those tools, in my opinion, need to be improved and streamlined to help provide better service for the folks that we serve, you. So that's that. I know that we're on a time frame, so I will pass the mic to my left.
Thank you,
And
Carl.
have at it.
Healthcare. I serve on the Healthcare Appropriations Subcommittee, so I'm constantly trying to become better educated on the complex healthcare system we have in place. And Senator Eckert's background as a nurse and her expertise in this area has benefited our entire delegation. Want to make a couple points and follow up on the points that Senator Eckert made. We do have very strong leadership in Governor Hogan's administration in the area of health care. And you have Secretary Dennis Schrader, who's our Secretary of Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. You have Commissioner Al Redmer, another person who's has been a legislator before he was, this is the second time around, I believe, that he's been commissioner. He was commissioner in Governor Ehrlich's administration. And I also want to point out someone's name that you probably have not heard, and that's Shannon McMahon. And she is our Medicaid director. And I have to tell you, I try to, in the interim, to go on an occasional conference and try to basically get smarter on some of these issues. And I had the opportunity to go to a conference with Shannon McMahon, with other Medicaid directors from around the country. And what became very evident is that everybody was turning to Shannon for leadership and for the expertise on moving their own states forward. So that, first of all, gives you an idea of, that we are on the right track in Maryland. Governor Hogan has made very clear, obviously he's committed to quality health care, affordable health care. He has said that there's parts of the Affordable Care Act that work, such as the pre-existing conditions, but he also said there's definitely parts that we know we have to fix. We have skyrocketing premiums. So I think if we take this approach, as it was noted, the House at the federal level has moved forward with the bill. We're waiting to see what the Senate does. I believe that with Governor Hogan and the leadership in place, we can take a very measured response on what can continue to work for Maryland and advocate for that. I do know Governor Hogan has been in contact with President Trump's administration, specifically Vice President Pence, former governor. They have a relationship there. So we have to continue to advocate for what works in Maryland as changes are made at the federal level, and I plan to be part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnny?
And thanks. I'll be very quick. With the changes, the changes that have taken place, how they're affecting providers, the docs, I think some would point out some things that have actually helped them. A lot of the docs would probably find things that they would complain about or cite as being problems. But it's happening this September, and it's not breaking news or anything, but I think everybody's going to get a letter, or most people are going to get letters saying your health insurance premiums are going up, again, and everybody is going to be furious again. And, what's going on, I was with Senator Cardin yesterday, and Senator Cardin said, there's a couple things in our country that are broken, immigration and healthcare. And he said our healthcare system is not working right now. There are people that are getting coverage that weren't getting coverage before or being helped, yes, but there's also people who had coverage before who can't afford it now. And people who do have it are paying a lot for not a whole lot in return because of their deductible. That's a federal discussion, but to hear Senator Cardin say that publicly, to me, means that I think the truth's coming out. But in the short term, September, I'm not sure things are going to change for the docs, the providers, but I know that the insured, these premium letters are going to come out, and there's no simple answer. And it's something that's real high. It's an important issue for my agenda for the interim. I just don't know where the solution is in the interim. So I've heard about self-insuring as an option. These are things I'm trying to learn about to provide recommendations to others. But I think that the heads up is that the forecast for what's going on with our healthcare system, at least from the users, is that we've got a dark forecast ahead. So I hate to bring the bad news, but that's what I see coming.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for sharing your comments. And very simply, if I had been in Congress in 2010, I wouldn't have voted for the Affordable Care Act. And we were in the middle of the Great Recession. Respectfully, I think as we focused on Wall Street, we should have focused on Main Street, but that's looking backwards. But it was the law. It was upheld by the Supreme Court. And when it came to Maryland, I was on the committee of jurisdiction, turning it locally to the question about the health care exchange. I believed in it. I supported it. I look here, I look in your eyes, and I see the personal stories. We can talk about health care and what it's like when you have preventative health care and what it's like when you're afforded the coverage of health care. I look at the business side. I see Chris Hall here. I know what it was like when hospitals have a bad debt. I know what it's like when you get a patient that comes in that's very progressed, unfortunately, in their health care situation. So I would have preferred, which I did do, I preferred to support the health care exchange because I would prefer to have Maryland administer it respectfully and not the federal government. I felt more comfortable with that. When you look at the tens of thousands of people that we've afforded health care in some of the most poor areas of the state of Maryland, right here on the Eastern Shore, I believe in it. Now, in closing, I certainly would never let I try not to be the enemy of the good. And do I believe that we can amend it, make it better? Absolutely. Since the time it was adopted till today, there was a interest, the number one priority. I mean, we're going to try and answer this question in 3 minutes with something that's dominated our political scene for 10 years. It's not going to work, folks. But bottom line is, finally, the political winds have blown in the House to the degree of repeal. You see a pause in the Senate, and I'm comfortable with what happens. But regardless of what happens, if we go back to MHIP, Maryland Health Insurance Program, and MCHIP, Maryland Children's Health Insurance Program, I'm certain that we're going to do everything we can do affordably to our taxpayers and those who are insured to provide that health care. That's what the commission's about, and that's what good rational government's about. Thank you very much.
Well, it's getting to be 10 o'clock. We're going to have the delegation have, I don't know if I can say this word, short comments, closing comments before we end the session. We got through 2 out of 5 questions. So if we could start with Senator Mathias.
Well, thank you again, and I do appreciate being here. And Bill Chambers, I wish you the best. And you know, who has brought enlightenment to us very quickly throughout the years has been Ernie. I hope he's out there somewhere playing golf or enjoying himself. But he brought the 2 ends of the spectrum together, and that's what the Chamber does. You know, we know how important agriculture is. That was a question. We're together about 100% of the time when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to tourism, when it comes to small business. And when we're not, you know, our difference of opinion is not coarse, it's not hard. It's with great respect. And we have a legislative branch here, a democratically controlled legislature, that we can get the job done, and it's evident. We have an executive branch that has a solid governor that's been very moderate that we like, and we've been able to work very well together. I think this is a great mix here for the shore. It's a mix of efficiency. If I was going to say one thing, I think we probably could have named this session the Warwick Community College session. They had a great, where's Dr. Hoy? Is he still in the house? And Dr. Hoy, I thank you for your advocacy. And you know some of the, and I thank you for your advocacy and my colleagues for allowing it, whether it was the bill that, I know every time I got to a point, and I'll end it here, over the years, I've been doing this. I think I started doing this when, you know, this is a tired line, I guess, when I had brown hair, but, you know, now you see the rest of the story. But every way, from salt and pepper to white, every time I saw Dr. Hoy, man, oh my God, the cave formula, they're killing us, they're killing us, they're cutting us, they're cutting us. Well, guess what? We're able to do a lot of different things. You look at the capital monies we've been able to bring here, and I'll end it here, Allied Health Building, but specifically, we were able to bring a bill, small college bill, that added over $400,000 right here to your funding. And I want to congratulate my colleagues for voting for that bill and congratulate you for working it. You know, Warwick, I see John, I mean, Wycomico County, John and Wycomico County, they brought that scholarship program, I think is very, very smart to affordably allow our students and all to come back and continue their education. And Somerset County followed that. Governor Hogan, we took that as a form as a bill. It didn't look like the bill was going to fare well, and we worked the executive branch, and they put it in a supplemental budget. Guess what, folks? Somerset County now has a scholarship program, Madam Superintendent, that mimics Wycomico. And I heard today, last year I think you had a whole, I might be a little off, but last year you had maybe 39 students from Somerset. This year you got 90 students have applied for that Somerset scholarship money. So how about that? We're doing a great job. Whether it's addiction, and you look over here, the Hope Bill, the hotline, or whether it's insidious disease of cancer. You know, we lost another lovely person in Ocean City, Cheryl Matresic, our commissioner's 52 years old. You know, we fight every day. And I have a whole book here of things that we've been able to accomplish. But whether it's tomography, women, we're looking out for you every day and our loved ones in our lives to make sure that we can get early detection. Stage 4 cancer, that insurance companies, you know, as good as they are, that's how tough they are, and you got to fight them every day because they don't want to pay respectfully. I'm not going to say for anything, but they don't want to pay for what they want to pay for. Bills like that, and tomorrow, when you look at Wallops Island, what we're doing down there, and the technology we're needing, the Northrop Grumman tax break last year, all the way up to Catarina here with toroid, and what we're getting ready, hopefully, to do one day by moderating it with offshore wind, or Dave Rummel with the bill that we passed that will allow motorcycles, this might sound a little funny, allow motorcycles to be sold at a motor event like Bike Week in Ocean City. Dave Ryan called and said, hey, I really need this bill because Dave Rommel's going to open up a Harley dealership in Salisbury, and he wants to feel like he's got a future. We were able to pass that bill, other bills, but most importantly is with your support and your help. I appreciate it thus far. I ask for it and continue it as we go forward. And God bless you. I'm always down the beach every day this time of year. Reach out. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
It's been an incredible honor serving in the legislature. I can't thank everybody enough for the support. Driving business is so critical for the Eastern Shore. We're unique to the state of Maryland, and I'm just happy to point out that, you know, in the last 3 years with Governor Hogan's leadership, our shore delegation, you know, we all work hand in glove. We all bring a different set of tools to the table, but we're leading the Mid-Atlantic in so many categories, and the future is bright, generally speaking. And so I'm looking forward to that. This interim, I will be in Wacomico, Talbot, Dorchester, and Caroline counties on a daily basis. And if I can ever do anything to help, or you think there's something we need to know, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be there, and I'll get to work on fixing things. If we can do it without legislation, then let's get it done today rather than tomorrow. Thank you.
Hey, coming down the home stretch here, because we always are short of time, I did leave some end of session letters. And even if you just skim the headlines and give me some feedback, that's helpful during this interim as we prepare for the next session, because I think you all are hearing that we do an awful lot of work strategy-wise to prepare for the next session. And as Delegate Mounts mentioned, a lot of our work can be done without legislation, which is probably more beneficial to you all anyway. Just a couple quick points on the Appropriations Committee. I obviously spend the bulk of my time going through the budget, working very closely with Governor Hogan's administration on the priorities. And it's a constant balancing act. We're really proud of the product that we have, which is structurally sound, fiscally responsible budget. No new taxes. That's an applause line, I think. And also, with Governor Hogan's commitment, we're putting more in our reserves, which I think is obviously very important to keep that rainy day fund healthy. And we made a little bit of progress on making better adjusting our revenue adjustments. At the same time, when I say it's a balancing act, we had some priorities right here in the shore that we wanted to make sure we move forward with. Want to give Delegate Anderton credit for really advocating for Purdue Stadium and keeping that on track, along with County Executive Culver. Also the Salisbury revitalization money, protecting that money. You all, your early advocacy, signaling that that was a priority to us on the early end of the budget was very important to us. I have to mention how much I've enjoyed working with Dr. Hoy and how much I have learned about this gem that we have, Warwick. We do advocate very strongly for Warwick, and this year we really wanted to fight for equity funding. It was very clear that the funding for small community colleges was out of whack, with the Western Maryland schools getting more than the rest of the shore schools. And we had a bill that had 9 lives. It was, it was going to pass, and it wasn't. And the whole point of the bill was to provide equity funding. And at I think it was in the closing days of the session, the bill came back to Appropriations Committee, and I'm looking at the language, and I'm like, well, this bill doesn't do what it was intended to do, which is to provide equity funding. So with Dr. Hoy's help and Dr. Hoy's able to get his other small college presidents on board, we were able to offer an amendment and put that funding back in line. So now Warwick will have the same level as the other small community college, $851,000 starting in FY19. So that was something that you wouldn't think that would be such a heavy lift, but thanks to Dr. Hoy's leadership, we were able to get that done. And finally, I just want to close on a personal note, because you never know. Sometimes you just can't plan what you're going to work on in a session. I mean, obviously I know I'm going to work on the budget. That's top priority. But I had an issue that came my way during the interim, and it was the family of Rob Schultes. You all, I know a friend, killed by a driver under the influence of heroin. And a representative of his family came to me during the interim and said, what the family is really having to struggle with here is when Matt Massarella, before he became judge, was state's attorney, pointed out to them that the penalty, if you killed somebody driving under the influence of heroin or a controlled substance, is less than if you were killed under the influence of alcohol. Alcohol was 5 years, and a controlled substance was 3 years. And there was just such an inequity in the penalty. And they said, can you do anything about this? And thanks to the Wicomico State's Attorney, the State's Attorneys Association, but really the powerful testimony that the family came up and testified in person, and then to have the bill, to have Governor Hogan sign the bill that put the equity in the penalty to make it up to 5 years, and have the widow, Shannon, and the children there for the bill signing maybe brought some healing to the family. So I wanted to leave that with you because it is personal, and it does show that you can't necessarily plan what's on our agenda, but you can bring stories and what's going on in your everyday life, and maybe we can make a difference. So thank you very much for the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so a lot of cool things happened this year. One that hasn't been discussed was the More Jobs for Marylanders program. That was really cool. We had talked about that with then candidate Hogan back in 2014, and here we are. We got it done. So, we all of us ran on, getting the state out of the way, try to foster some opportunity to create jobs here on the lower shore, and there it is. I think that's pretty cool. I still can't believe it actually passed. I keep looking at this thing every day to make sure it's written and it doesn't erase. Because, a lot of times, Maryland's been said not very business friendly, and that's very true, but we're getting there. We're rounding the corner. This program, if it is matched with the county and whatever municipality is looking to attract somebody, I think is some real tools in the toolbox, to put some folks back to work. And I think once we are able to attract those types of employers here, that'll help offset that minimum wage issue. That question, we'll answer that one. We haven't even got the 1010 yet, and they're already looking at $15 an hour. The reason they're looking at $15 an hour is because there is nobody that pays $15 an hour. So if we can't entice them, we'll just create it, but it's not how it works. That's not the right way to do it. I think going through the incentive or lowering taxes or doing what we can to attract somebody in here who pays those type of wages is the proper way to do it. And so I hope that is definitely taken advantage of. I do want to give a shout out. I sit between Cherie and Mary Beth on the House floor, and I think all three of us did pretty good. Cherie was lobbying hard for UMES. You got a new building in the budget, right? Yes, pretty cool. Yeah. And of course, Mary Beth and the House side really hammered for Warwick. It was every day. And, I'd say, hey, how you doing? She'd say, Warwick. I said, hey, you want something to drink? You want me to get something to eat? Candy bar? No, Warwick. So, she really hammered hard. That was uphill. And then for us, with Salisbury University receiving an increase of $2.3 million in operational funding this year is really cool because we're always consistently at the bottom of that list. And so now I think we are next to bottom on that list, so which is good. We'll take what we can get. But the cool thing is being able to interact with you during session. I want to give a shout out to Libby Wisner in the back, all the way in the back of the room. I wore her Facebook chat and text messaging out during session because I sit on the committee that deals with rental laws and landlord issues and real estate. And so I'm texting her bill numbers. I'm like, what's this mean? And she texts back, it sucks. Or she'd say, it's cool. Or, this might be better or that might be better. Or, a couple other words I won't repeat, but it was fun having that interaction. It was very useful for us, especially on the floor, as we're texting each other. Our contacts that we have here on the shore on bills, because bills are coming so fast. And, so it's really good the interaction we have with you and with everybody else. So if anybody doesn't have my phone number, it's 443-3591-335. And you can contact me through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I do have a Snapchat. I don't know how to use it yet, but I got it. Apparently it's good for taking selfies, though, so we'll try that out. So, but again, just thank you so much for this opportunity. We have a great team, and it's just good to be home. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been probably the most exciting year I've had in the legislature this year because when we started out with kind of a political flavor of a lot of dismay about what was happening at the federal level, meanwhile, there were a lot of opportunities for us on the ground. This time last year, remember, we were talking about the roadkill bill. So the governor put in a repeal, and that bill came through our committee. And I'll tell you, we do a lot of bipartisan work on our committee on budget and tax. So that was exciting to be able to eventually get that bill watered down enough that we can continue to score projects the way we've been scoring projects. And we'll look at how that's done and make recommendations for another day. The other bill I just wanted to talk about, that 317, Senate Bill 317, that Delegate Anderton talked about, More Jobs for Maryland, actually incorporated two of the bills that you had on your list. If you look at number 5, college education and debt, they were actually worked into the More Jobs for Marylanders that does a manufacturing tax credit. It expands the distressed county eligibility, then bolsters apprenticeships because we're going to be looking at what's existing, and it provides a way to sequence scholarship and tax credits for employers who employ those apprentices. So it is a combination bill. I think the department's still working out how they're going to put it into regulation and make it workable, but that's a good thing. The other issue, it's a good time for infrastructure, so I worked on a package of bills that created a land bank authority, which will be a good thing to be able to make sure that vacant properties can get through the tax sale, foreclosure tax sale, and then be turned back into adequate affordable housing. We did an expedited foreclosure bill, we did a study of the tax sale. All will be important as we strengthen our communities to improve housing opportunity. We also, as you know, continued to work on healthcare with a great infusion of money to deal with the substance abuse issue. And we can focus it on opioids and naloxone and all of that, but when you think about that, that's all a part of the emergency care that goes into dealing with brain disease and ultimately the bigger healthcare system. So that was a good thing. One more incentive for jobs. There's a biotax credit, and again, we were able to work in a bipartisan fashion, opportunity to bring in, to modify that bill, to get an amendment on it so that we can bring some biotech companies to Dorchester County, and we are working on that as we speak. So we look forward to a slow increase in the economy and improvement for our infrastructure, and all of these initiatives that I talked about, and actually all that have been talked about across this table today, come from you, the people, and that's what's really important. So we're glad to carry your issues to Annapolis and get the job done.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, it is a privilege and an honor to serve you in Annapolis. I'm only 3 years removed from being on the other side of this table. I had a Democrat legislator and a friend of mine say, Chris, you're like a fish out of water here in Annapolis, which is exactly what we need. You'll recognize that I'm very passionate about business issues, and I make no mistake for when I don't like something, I call it out and try to fight these things. I'd give Johnny Mouts a high five if I could make it that far. He and I serve on Economic Matters Committee. And let me just say to you, in that committee, we do great work as Republicans in making sure that we advocate for limited government when we can, kill bad bills, which we're very successful in doing. But if a bill is going to pass, we hope, against hope, that we can make some changes to make those laws workable. So we do pass a lot of bills in Annapolis, and so you can count on Johnny and I to make that kind of effort in the committee that matters, I think, most to you on the House side. Yesterday I was at the Maryland Business for Responsive Government Summit. Governor Hogan was there, so I got a chance to see him and just talk very briefly with him, just a couple moments. But let me just say to you that he spoke in front of 730 business people throughout the state who came to hear him talk about how he feels the state of Maryland is right now from a business perspective. And I am just astounded, and as a business person who had to go through the recession like many of us had, but also recognizing that fighting Maryland and some of the overreach that we've had to endure as a business person, astounded by how Maryland was able to come to a conclusion that we needed to elect a non-politician as governor, someone who was a business person, much like myself, was able to put trust in this gentleman to lead our state, to create limited spending where it was needed, to put the focus back on the business community, which I believe he's done. To have 730 people show up at a meeting like that is not usual, I'm being told, but he is loved within the business community for the fact of one reason, that he listens and he hears what the employers are saying, because we are very important. We pay the payroll taxes, we pay the corporate income taxes. We are the means by which the state achieves the goals socially and environmentally, infrastructure. It all starts and ends in a room like this. And so as a Republican, but also as a business person, I can only reflect in my closing comments that I picked the right time to serve. Senator Eckhart said to me after I won the election, she said, "Chris, you'll never know how lucky you are winning office with a Republican governor coming in." And I've found that to be true and validating. I will surely run again for a second term in the House of Delegates, because I've found a place and I've learned through listening, and I see many people in the room here that have met with me or will be meeting with me soon one-on-one, where I'm trying to better understand my job in Annapolis and be a voice that can help carry conversations when I'm in office. So I'll just close in saying thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. And Bill, please keep up your good work. You've got a great group of business people here, and in the very short time I've gotten to meet you, you're doing great work, and I think you'll do great for the group here, so thank you.
A little technical difficulties. I just want to say I'm proud of this group, of this delegation. We have other members from the Upper Shore that are part of our Eastern Shore delegation, and we've done well not to get parochial. We care about the entire shore and the entire state of Maryland, and oftentimes we find ourselves in a position to support things that are supportive of Baltimore City, because we're in the same position. Whether it be supporting Ocean City as a destination location, or going to Snow Hill and paddling on the Pocomoke River, or the Discovery Center in Pocomoke, or the Summers Cove Marina in Crisfield, the Teagle Mansion in Princess Anne, the great things in Salisbury and Wycomico County. Wycomico County getting ready to celebrate 150 years. I think last September, Somerset County, we celebrated 350 years, and you came out a part of that. So I just look forward. We'll have other threats coming election year. That it's the Grand Theater session. I mean, there'll be some anti-chicken bills. There'll be we're killing the environment in agriculture. Blame it again. Beat on us, even though 70% of the fresh water goes into Bay, comes out of the Susquehanna River through the Conowingo Dam. But we'll continue that fight, and I think we got the reputation of being straight shooters. And you know, if it doesn't help our side, we'll ante up and say that's true too. You know, but we appreciate your support and support of the chamber, because the Maryland Chamber has been more relevant this session too, or the last couple sessions. A lot of times I found that they were on a different page than the local chambers, but they've been pretty in sync in business friendliness today. And I'd look for the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce or my other local chambers for the information to verify what the Maryland Chamber tells me. And you need to keep active in that organization as well. With that, I thank you for your support.
Certainly, the time here has been spent pretty well, and my time sitting here, I've just been constantly glancing over at the posters that are there on the wall. I think the first time I had a chance to look at those we were at the Civic Center when we were with the Health Department and giving out awards for persons or organizations working along with the heroin issue, with the alcohol overdose issues, and all those types of things. But what I noticed at that particular meeting was that we had the young people at the helm. They were the ones there helping to bridge the gap and helping us as legislators and older adults to understand what they're up against in their lives as young people. And unfortunately, sometimes it leads to drug overdose and heroin and things of that nature. So I will be remiss in saying that I just wanted to make you aware that there was one piece of legislation that I'm very much was supportive of and continually want to get the word out. And that particular legislation is House Bill 669, and that deals with the two-way tip program that our Board of Education can utilize. And that is where it's an anonymous tip program for students or teachers to be aware of bullying that may be going on in the school system, and then be able to use that through a text messaging programming so people are well aware, so they're not intimidated to share their concerns and what are going on. That goes back again to some things that young people are experiencing, and legislation that we pass can in fact help make some of these changes in our day-to-day lives and for our young people, so we don't have more young people in the paths of drug overdose and addiction and things of that nature. So I just wanted to bring that up, that we are trying to make inroads and strides there in that particular area. One of the other things I wanted to just highlight is that there's one of the questions, and this is the last one in particular, that talks about brain drain. We, and Senator Eckhart and myself, we got a bill passed that dealt with physicians being able to receive a tax credit if they in fact work with persons in the medical field and trying to keep them in the community. And so that is an incentive for physicians and nurse practitioners to be able to have that hands-on, one-on-one with someone in the medical field and trying to keep them in the area. So that's something that I thought was really beneficial and will continue to serve our community well. One of the other things that we're working on with the rural health community programming and the committee, I should say. We met over at Chesapeake College last week, but one of the things they did talk about there was to provide rural scholarships for physicians to try to get them to stay in the 8 years in our community and serve, because a lot of our physicians are getting much older and they're phasing out, and so we need to try to figure out creatively the commitment that we can have with the rural communities, with the state, and trying to make sure we can keep those persons in our community. So there are ideas out there. We just got to continue to have the conversations and see financially how we can make those things happen. But long term, it's for the betterment of our community. And so as we continue to move forward, we look at tax credits options. We look at ways to fight the good fight for funding for our communities. One last thing I'll share is that this year, our rural council, Rural Maryland Council, received $4 million in the budget, which is a big difference from the $2 million. Now we're at $4 million. We're aiming for $6 million, because a lot of great things happen here in our rural community, and we should be able to support that. We should be able to support minority businesses. I think that some of those have borne out of, or some of the businesses have borne out of that rural Maryland funding. And so if we continue along that path and supporting, then we can make a world of difference right here in our community. So to that end, I'll close and just say thank you for allowing me to serve. I do appreciate it. I do love what I do, and making sure I'm here for the citizens. So thank you.
Let's give our Eastern Shore delegation another round of applause for them coming here this morning. I would like to once again thank our sponsors, Hebron Savings Bank, WBOC, Good Nature, and Bank of America. I'd like to thank the audience for attending this morning and remind you to check out the Chamber website and make sure of all the new educational offerings we have in the region, and to talk to your legislators about issues within the business community which will help our area. They're working for us, so we need to use them, and we appreciate their time this morning. And thanks for you all for attending this morning. Thank you very much.
See you.